Karen thought cutting across my lawn in her Lamborghini was harmless fun. Every morning, that neon yellow beast roared over my corner lot, shredding the 2000 Kentucky bluegrass I'd spent weeks cultivating. She called it a shortcut. I called it trespassing. 3 months straight, her tires chewed through my soil like it was her personal racetrack. I'd fix it, she'd destroy it again. Once she even waved from the window, laughing as my fence splintered beneath her wheels. But here's the thing. I've spent over 20 years as an electrician. I know exactly how deep concrete foundations go, and I was about to build something even her $1 million Lamborghini wouldn't walk away from. Karen thought destroying my lawn was just harmless fun. She called it taking a shortcut. I called it vandalism. Every morning, like clockwork, that shiny yellow Lamborghini Huracan of hers would glide out of her driveway, swerve across the street corner, and slice straight through my front yard like it was a racetrack. Not once, not twice, but every single day, for 3 months straight. And every time those low-profile tires rolled over my $2,000 Kentucky bluegrass, I could almost hear the crunch of wasted effort, the sound of 3 summers of care, fertilizer, and patience getting trampled under her arrogance. Karen was in her 30s, a woman who wore her confidence like armor. Short, messy blonde hair, designer sunglasses, and a permanent smirk that could cut glass. To her, my property wasn't a boundary. It was an obstacle to her convenience. She'd laugh sometimes when she caught me watching. "Oh, relax, Marcus," she'd shout through her open window, her voice carrying across the neighborhood. "It's just grass!" Yeah, just grass, except that grass was my peace of mind. My corner lot. My pride. I'm Marcus Joseph, an electrician for more than 20 years. I've wired everything from hospitals to data centers. I know structure, design, load, and how deep concrete goes when it's meant to last. So when Karen kept grinding her 1,000-horsepower ego through my yard, I knew exactly what I'd do. But back then, all I could do was watch. It started small, barely a tire mark at first. Then a rut, then 2. By the second week, the entire corner looked like a miniature dirt track, carved by the same arrogant root. One Saturday morning, I caught her again. I was kneeling near the flower bed, trimming the edges, when that engine roared from down the street. The dogs, 2 loyal German shepherds, Diesel and Rusty, jumped up barking like mad. She didn't slow down. The car jolted over my curb, scattering dirt and pebbles. The smell of burning rubber hit my nose as I flinched away. Her tinted window rolled down halfway. "You should move that fence back," she said, grinning. "Your lawn's in the way of progress." That was her idea of a joke, and before I could even answer, she was gone, vanishing behind the row of manicured hedges. I remember standing there, clipping shears in hand, shaking, not from fear, but from the kind of quiet anger that builds in layers. Every rut, every tread mark, it all stacked up inside me. By week 3, my corner looked like a battlefield. I tried talking to the HOA about it. They shrugged. Said the street corner was shared visibility property, whatever that meant. Karen was on the board, of course. She smirked through the entire meeting. "Maybe you shouldn't have grass there," she said sweetly. "We could pave it, make it cleaner," and everyone laughed. That night, I walked my property line in silence. The moonlight reflected off the broken fence where her car had clipped it earlier that day. Diesel sniffed at the tire tracks, whining softly. And that's when I decided, if Karen wanted a shortcut, I'd build one for her, one she'd never forget. The next morning, I didn't mow. I didn't water. I didn't patch the ruts, I just measured every inch of that destroyed grass, every dip in the soil, every turn of her wheels, and as the noon sun baked the ground, I started marking out something that would change everything, a plan forming in my mind like circuitry connecting to a power source. It wasn't rage anymore. It was engineering. Karen had no idea what was coming. Marcus spent the next few evenings in a rhythm only an engineer could love. Precise, silent, deliberate. Every step had purpose. Every hammer strike echoed with restrained anger. He waited until sunset, just as the last HOA patrol finished its pointless evening round. Under the orange sky, he laid out string lines, measured every inch of the area Karen's Lamborghini loved to crush, and marked each point with chalk. His dogs, Max and Duke, sat nearby like loyal sentinels, watching their owner dig into the heart of the lawn that had once been lush and proud. He wasn't planting flowers this time. He was building a lesson. The ground beneath his Kentucky bluegrass was thick clay, stable enough to hold what he had in mind. Using his electrician's precision and the concrete mixing skills he'd learned repairing underground power vaults, he began constructing a trap, not to harm anyone, but to teach respect the way arrogance never understood, through consequences. He built a hidden concrete trench, about a foot deep, disguised perfectly beneath the turf. Inside, he installed reinforced steel bars, coated with a thin layer of soil, and replaced patches of grass to make the surface seamless. It wasn't a ditch, not quite, but if 2-ton Italian wheels rolled over it, something was bound to give way. Just not the ground. As he worked, he remembered every conversation with Karen, how she'd once called his dogs eyesores, how she'd demanded he paint his mailbox to match her house, how she'd stood in her driveway with her clipboard, listing violations that didn't exist. The final straw had been her laughter, the loud, echoing kind that cut through the neighborhood one morning as she drove straight across his corner again, her Lamborghini's engine roaring like it owned the block. That sound had stayed with Marcus, like an echo he couldn't unhear. Now, in the dimming light, he stepped back from his work. The once ruined section of lawn looked perfect, smooth, green, peaceful. Karen would never notice the difference. Beneath it, though, sat 6 inches of compacted, reinforced concrete with embedded rebar, the kind that could stop a speeding vehicle in its tracks. The next day, Marcus woke early and sat on his porch sipping black coffee, watching the sunlight crawl over the neighborhood. The same routine played out. Mail truck at 9, garbage truck at 10, Karen's Lamborghini by 11. He heard the faint hum of the engine before he saw it. That yellow blur came tearing around the corner, tires skimming the curb. His dogs tensed. Marcus smirked. The Lamborghini's front wheels touched the lawn, and then came the sound. Not the soft crunch of grass, not the hum of rubber, but the violent, shattering crack of fiberglass meeting something far less forgiving. The car jerked forward, the frame groaned, and smoke hissed from underneath. Marcus stood slowly, coffee cup still in hand, expression unreadable. Karen slammed her door and stumbled out in disbelief. "What did you do to my car?" she screamed, voice echoing across the block. Neighbors peeked from windows, cameras already in hand. Marcus said nothing at first. He simply walked toward her, stopping 10 feet away, the perfect distance between rage and reason. "Karen," he said evenly, "I told you to stop cutting through my property." Her face went crimson. "You sabotaged me. You vandalized my car." Marcus gestured at the untouched grass. "Looks fine to me. You drove across private property and hit, well, something you shouldn't have. Something you put there," she snapped. He tilted his head. "If you didn't drive on my lawn, you wouldn't have found out, would you?" For a moment, all she could do was stare, part fury, part shock, part realization that she'd just totaled her own supercar by being exactly who she was. Then came the sound of sirens in the distance. Someone had called the cops. Marcus just took another sip of coffee, watching her crumble in disbelief as the truth set in. The wail of sirens echoed down the cul-de-sac like a slow-moving storm. Karen stood in the middle of Marcus's lawn, or what was left of it, her yellow Lamborghini now tilted at an awkward angle, one tire shredded and a thin line of smoke hissing from beneath. Her manicured hands waved frantically at the approaching police cars. "Right here! Officer, arrest him!" she screamed, voice cracking. "He booby-trapped his property! He destroyed my car!" Marcus exhaled through his nose, calm as stone. His dogs sat beside him, tails thumping lightly on the porch wood, as if they'd seen this before. 2 police cruisers pulled up, lights still flashing in the bright midday sun. The officers stepped out, one older, one fresh-faced, their expressions halfway between confusion and amusement as they took in the sight. A millionaire's car smoking on a patch of suburban lawn. The senior officer, Sergeant Davis adjusted his hat and walked over to Karen first. "Ma'am, could you tell me what happened here?" Karen didn't waste a second. "This man, this lunatic, then sabotaged his own property. He put some kind of concrete or spikes under the grass, so when I was driving through, Davis repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Through his lawn?" Karen froze, realizing her words betrayed her. "Well, yes, but everyone uses this shortcut. The HOA approved it verbally." Marcus finally stood up, coffee mug still in hand. "No, they didn't. I own this corner lot. Been here 8 years. Paid every tax, maintained every inch." He looked straight at Davis. "And for the last 3 months, she's been using it as her personal racetrack." Davis turned toward him. "You're the homeowner, then?" "Yes, sir. Marcus Joseph, electrician, and that's my property." Karen jabbed a finger toward him, eyes wide with disbelief. "He's lying. The HOA gave us the right to pass through that corner. He's making this up to embarrass me." Marcus chuckled quietly. "Then maybe you should show them the paperwork. I'm sure the HOA has a record of giving you permission to destroy $2,000 worth of bluegrass." A murmur spread through the small crowd that had gathered. Neighbors, phones out, recording every second. A few even whispered Marcus's name, the same folks who'd warned Karen before. Sergeant Davis sighed, writing something on his notepad. "Ma'am, I'm gonna need to see your license and registration." Karen scoffed but obeyed, storming toward her car and muttering curses under her breath. The younger officer inspected the lawn, kneeling to touch the surface. "Sarge, this doesn't look like a trap." "Looks like reinforced ground. Nothing sharp or dangerous." Marcus nodded. "Exactly. Just strong enough to handle wear and tear, unlike a lawn." The sergeant looked up at Marcus, almost smiling. "So you just reinforced your yard? Let's call it preventive maintenance." Karen's jaw dropped. "He's mocking you, officer. That's not maintenance, that's entrapment." Davis straightened up. "Ma'am, with all due respect, driving on private property is trespassing. He has every right to protect his lawn, and as long as it's not harmful. But look at my car," she shrieked, pointing at the Lamborghini. "That's $1 million vehicle." The sergeant shrugged. "Then maybe don't drive $1 million vehicle over someone's yard." A burst of laughter rippled through the neighbors. Karen's face turned crimson as she realized, for once, she wasn't in control of the narrative. Marcus didn't gloat. He simply looked down at the wrecked grass, then back at her. "I warned you, Karen. Every time you did this, I asked nicely. 3 months of asking, 3 months of you laughing. I'm done asking." Her composure cracked. You think you've won?" "I'll have the HOA file charges. You'll be paying for my car." "Good luck explaining to your insurance that you totaled your Lamborghini on someone else's property," Marcus replied evenly. Sergeant Davis closed his notepad. "Ma'am, if you'd like to pursue this, you can take it up in civil court. But for now, you're free to call a tow truck. This vehicle's not moving anywhere on its own." Karen's shoulders slumped as the officers returned to their cars. Neighbors whispered. Cameras clicked. As the tow truck arrived and slowly lifted her broken pride onto the ramp, Karen turned toward Marcus, eyes burning. "You'll regret this." He looked at her one last time. "Already did. 3 months ago." She drove off in the passenger seat of the tow truck, humiliated, her clipboard left behind in the grass. Marcus picked it up, brushed off the dirt, and tossed it into his trash can. His dogs barked once, as if to punctuate the moment. For the first time in months, the air over his corner lot felt still, quiet, peaceful. But he knew Karen wasn't done. He could feel it in the silence she left behind. It didn't take long. A week, maybe less. The smell of cut grass was still fresh when the first letter showed up. An official envelope from the Homeowners Association, complete with their logo embossed like a badge of arrogance. Marcus tore it open at his kitchen table, still in his work shirt. His dog slept by the door, the afternoon sun slanting across the floorboards. Notice of violation. Unsanctioned structural alteration to front property. He smirked. Of course. Karen was back. That night, he spotted her at the end of the street, clipboard in hand, walking with 2 HOA board members, Harold and Joyce, both of whom looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. She gestured animatedly toward his lawn, pointing, waving, whispering. the same expression she wore the day her Lamborghini was loaded onto the tow truck. Righteous fury coated in fake professionalism. Marcus stepped outside, coffee mug in hand, same as before. "Evening, Karen." She didn't answer, only turned sharply to the HOA pair. "There, you see? He installed concrete illegally. It violates Soil Uniformity Code 4B, subsection 3. Harold blinked. "Soil uniformity?" Karen nodded furiously. "Yes! He modified the topography of his lot. That's a finable offense." Marcus chuckled. "You've really been reading the HOA handbook, huh?" Karen turned to him, her lips curling. "You think this is funny? You embarrassed me. In front of everyone. You cost me over $100 grand in repairs. That's not something people forget." Marcus took a slow sip, his eyes calm. "Then maybe you should have stayed off my lawn." Her voice rose, sharp and shrill. "You're finished, Marcus. I'll bury you in fines. You'll sell that house just to pay for my car." The HOA members shifted uncomfortably, but didn't stop her. Marcus set his mug down on the porch railing. "You know, Karen, I'm starting to wonder, are you obsessed with me or just bored?" Her face turned red, and for a second he thought she might swing that clipboard at him. But she just hissed, "Enjoy your little win. It's temporary." She left, heels crunching on the sidewalk, the board members shuffling behind her. The next few days were quiet. Then the letters started arriving daily. Fines for unsightly, reinforcement patterns, for failure to maintain uniform soil elevation, for unauthorized landscaping modifications. Marcus laughed at the absurdity but knew he needed to play it smart. He'd been an electrician for 20 years, which meant he understood systems. And the HOA, for all its pomp, was just another faulty system waiting to short out. He started collecting every notice, every email, every petty accusation. He recorded phone calls. He photographed her at his lawn with her clipboard. And one afternoon, when Karen parked her replacement SUV across from his driveway, Marcus quietly aimed his security camera at her. That's when he caught it. Karen walking onto his lawn again, kneeling beside the concrete edge and pouring something from a plastic bottle. The dogs barked. She flinched, then bolted. Marcus replayed the footage that night, jaw tightening. Weed killer. She was poisoning his grass. Again, he didn't call the cops. Not yet. He had something better in mind. The next morning, he drove to the county office, spoke with a friend in building inspection, and learned something Karen clearly didn't know. HOA regulations were public records, and he could request financial disclosures, including board member reimbursements. When he opened the file later that week, his suspicion solidified into a grin. Karen had been reimbursing herself for community landscaping expenses, thousands of dollars, while filing false violation claims against other homeowners. "Oh, Karen," Marcus muttered. "You shouldn't have made this personal." He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years, an old friend from the local news channel. "This is Marcus Joseph," he said. "You remember that HOA segment you ran last year? I've got a story you'll want to see." The evening news played softly in Marcus's living room, the glow of the TV flickering against his framed certificates, and a photo of his dogs sprawled on the rug. The anchor's voice cut through the quiet. "Local HOA president accused of financial misconduct. Residents claim years of fines and false violations." Marcus leaned back on the couch, arms folded. The footage rolled. Blurry phone videos of Karen yelling at residents, waving her clipboard like a sword. One clip showed her arguing with a delivery driver, another pacing his very lawn. Then the camera cut to a reporter standing near his neighborhood sign, wind tugging at her mic cord. Sources tell us the whistleblower provided detailed financial reports showing thousands in unauthorized reimbursements to the HOA president herself. Marcus smiled faintly. He didn't need to be on camera. His evidence spoke louder than his words ever could. By morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Karen's name was everywhere, social feeds, local forums, group chats. She tried to contain it, calling emergency HOA meetings, threatening legal action, blaming anonymous hackers. But it was too late. The damage was public. That same afternoon, Marcus was out front trimming his hedges when he saw her storming down the sidewalk. Her trademark blazer wrinkled, eyes blazing like wildfire. "You think this is funny?" she shouted before even reaching his driveway. "You went to the media?" Marcus didn't look up. "I sent them documents. What they do with them isn't up to me." "You've humiliated me," she screamed, voice cracking. "My job, my reputation, my life." He looked at her now, quiet but steady. "You destroyed my lawn for months, Karen. You tried to bankrupt me. You poisoned my grass. You made it personal. This isn't humiliation. It's accountability." Her hands trembled, fingers gripping her clipboard so hard it bent. "You think this is over? You're finished. I'll have every lawyer in this county on your case. You'll regret ever crossing me." "Then you'd better hurry," he said, eyes cold. "You're running out of people who'll take your calls." For a moment, the air between them felt charged, electric. His dogs barked once, sensing the tension. Karen turned sharply, storming off toward her car. But Marcus wasn't done yet. He had one final move, a way to make sure she couldn't twist this around. He called in a favor from a buddy who worked in construction inspection. Together, they reviewed HOA permits, comparing the community's filings with Karen's personal reimbursements. The numbers didn't just show misuse, they showed fraud. Karen had billed the HOA for a driveway drainage project on Marcus's lot. She'd claimed it was a community expense. He printed every record, filed the packet neatly, and handed it to the county office. By Friday, she was under official investigation. The news vans came again, this time camping near her pristine home. She tried to chase them away, yelling about privacy violations. But the more she screamed, the more the cameras loved her. Marcus watched from his porch as one van rolled past his house, a reporter glancing his way. He just nodded, sipping his coffee, dogs lounging beside him. That night, he heard a sound he hadn't heard in months. Peace. No revving engine, no tire tracks, no shouting. Just the hum of crickets and the rustle of leaves. He looked out his window, toward the faint glow of Karen's house down the block. Now surrounded by flashing lights and parked cars. Revenge hadn't been his goal, but justice. Oh yes, that had a sweet ring to it. He turned off the porch light and whispered, almost to himself, "Physics met arrogance, and arrogance lost." The following week felt strangely calm. Marcus almost didn't trust it. For the first time in months, the grass in his corner lot stayed untouched. His dogs roamed freely again, chasing each other through the soft Kentucky blue blades he'd replanted. The faint scent of fresh soil hung in the air, sweet and grounding, but deep down he knew Karen wasn't finished. People like her never went quietly. By Wednesday morning, that calm cracked. Marcus opened his mailbox to find 3 letters, all from different law firms. Each claimed to represent Karen, accusing him of property defamation, character assassination, and even emotional damages. He laughed, an exhausted, almost bitter sound. The woman who had destroyed his fence, crushed his grass, and nearly bankrupted him was now claiming emotional distress. Still, Marcus wasn't reckless. He'd been methodical through every step, documenting everything. He had drone footage, timestamps, witness statements, even receipts showing the exact cost of his destroyed Kentucky bluegrass. He scanned every letter, then forwarded them to his attorney with a short note. "She's losing control. Handle it by the book." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the houses, Marcus noticed headlights near his lot. A familiar white SUV idled across the street. Through the tinted window, he could make out Karen, phone to her ear, eyes locked on his house. She wasn't even trying to hide her obsession anymore. Minutes later, the screech of tires broke the quiet. Karen's Lamborghini, that gleaming symbol of her ego, came roaring down the road, swerving dangerously close to his corner lot. She stopped right where his grass began, engine purring like a predator. She stepped out, red-faced, trembling, barefoot this time, as if she'd lost patience for shoes. "You think you can ruin me?" she shouted, voice echoing across the quiet cul-de-sac. Marcus stepped out onto his porch, calm as ever. "You ruined yourself. You think this little vendetta makes you the hero?" She spat. You humiliated me on live TV, you liar! I just told the truth, he said evenly. The truth doesn't need makeup. Karen's face twisted. She started toward his lawn, fury radiating off her like heat. You think this grass matters? Watch this! Her hand flew to her car keys. She jumped back into the Lamborghini, slammed the door, and floored the accelerator. The tires shrieked as she spun toward the corner, straight for the patch of green she'd destroyed so many times before. But this time her confidence met something solid. There was a thunderous crack, a metallic scream, and the Lamborghini's front end crumpled as it slammed into what Marcus had built weeks earlier, a reinforced concrete foundation, hidden just beneath the grass. The car's sleek nose folded like paper. Steam burst from the hood. The airbags exploded with a muffled thump. Karen screamed, clutching the steering wheel as smoke billowed around her. Marcus's dogs barked wildly from the porch, startled by the chaos. Neighbors rushed out, phones raised, gasping and filming the scene. Is she okay? One of them yelled. Marcus exhaled slowly, dialing 911. She'll live. She's just learned what consequences feel like. Within minutes, sirens wailed down the street, flashing red and blue lights painting the white fences. Police cars swarmed the scene. 2 officers rushed to the wreck, pulling open the driver's door. Karen stumbled out, coughing, her once perfect hair matted and wild. One officer looked at Marcus. You the homeowner? He nodded, arms crossed. Yes, sir. Any idea why this woman drove into your property? Marcus looked at Karen, then back at the officer. Yeah, he said dryly. She's been testing the laws of physics for months. Guess she finally found the limit. Karen tried to shout, but the words tangled with tears. He did this. He set me up. The officer raised an eyebrow. You mean you drove onto private property over his grass and hit a buried foundation? It's sabotage, she cried. The second officer shook his head. Ma'am, if you hadn't trespassed, there wouldn't be an accident. Karen's jaw quivered as she realized the weight of what had just happened. The flashing lights reflected in her watery eyes, her once proud Lamborghini now a crumpled mess. Marcus stood back, silent, letting the moment play out. Justice at last had come full circle. Not in court, not online, but right here, in the dirt she'd mocked for months. By morning, the entire neighborhood buzzed with whispers. The video of Karen's Lamborghini wreck had gone viral overnight. Neighbors had uploaded it to their HOA Facebook page, and from there it spread like wildfire. HOA Queen destroys her own car on neighbor's lawn. The headline practically wrote itself. Marcus woke up to dozens of messages from friends, former co-workers, and even reporters. But he didn't bask in the chaos. He fed his dogs, poured himself a cup of coffee, and walked outside like any other morning. The air was crisp, sunlight spilling over his freshly trimmed Kentucky bluegrass. The damage from Karen's crash was minimal. The reinforced patch had held firm. Across the street, Karen's driveway looked like a battlefield. Her once flawless Lamborghini sat on a tow truck, its front end crushed beyond recognition. 2 police cruisers idled nearby, and a small group of curious neighbors watched from the sidewalks. Whispering behind coffee mugs, Marcus approached the edge of his property, nodding to Officer Stevens, the same man who had responded the night before. Morning. Sheriff, Stevens greeted with a smirk. Not a sheriff anymore, Marcus said with a faint smile. Just a homeowner trying to keep his grass intact. Yeah, well, looks like karma wore a badge for you, Stevens said, glancing at the mangled car. She's looking at reckless endangerment and trespassing. Again. Karen stood by the wreck, sunglasses covering her swollen eyes, phone glued to her ear. She wasn't yelling this time. Her posture was small, defensive, the fiery arrogance replaced by a trembling fear of consequences. For months, she'd believed herself untouchable, the self-proclaimed HOA queen. But now her kingdom was collapsing. Marcus leaned against his fence, speaking just loud enough for her to hear. You can trespass, Karen, but you can't escape physics. Her head snapped up, glare sharp enough to cut glass. You think you've won? She hissed, voice trembling. This isn't over! Oh, it's over, Marcus said calmly. You just haven't caught up yet. She turned away, fumbling for her phone again, muttering something about her lawyer. But even her tone sounded hollow now. Later that afternoon, HOA board members arrived, 3 of them, all looking uncomfortable. Their crisp blazers and fake smiles couldn't hide the truth. They were panicking. "Mr. Joseph," one of them began, wringing his hands. "We wanted to extend an apology on behalf of the association. Mrs. Walker's actions were unauthorized." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Unauthorized? You mean the same way my damaged fence, my fines, and those anonymous complaints were unauthorized?" The board members exchanged nervous glances. "We're conducting an internal review," the man said weakly. "And of course we'll be covering all of your property damages." "Good," Marcus said. "Make sure to include emotional damages for my dogs. They've had to listen to her scream for 3 months straight." One of the women stifled a chuckle before quickly clearing her throat. "We'll make a note of that." When they left, Marcus stood in the middle of his yard, hands on his hips, looking over what he'd built. The fresh grass shimmered under the noon sun, perfectly aligned, every blade a reminder that patience always outlasts arrogance. 2 weeks later, the court date came, and Karen's last defense crumbled. The judge, unimpressed by her theatrics, dismissed her claims and fined her heavily for property damage and reckless endangerment. When the footage of her crash was played in court, the room filled with quiet laughter. Marcus didn't even smile. He didn't need to. The truth was loud enough on its own. Afterward, local news covered the story. Electrician outsmarts HOA bully. Neighbors dropped by with coffee, handshakes, and quiet apologies for not standing up sooner. By the time summer arrived, the corner lot had become something of a neighborhood symbol, a patch of green resilience. Marcus even installed a small wooden sign at the edge of his property that read, "Private property. Trespassers will be educated." Every time he saw it, he couldn't help but smirk. One evening, as he sat on his porch with his dogs watching the sunset, he heard new tires on gravel. A different car this time, a modest sedan. Karen wasn't driving it. A man stepped out, handed Marcus an envelope, and said quietly, "She moved." Marcus took the envelope, nodding. Figures. He didn't open it right away. He didn't care what excuses or apologies she'd written. The story was over, not because she'd left, but because she'd learned the hard way that disrespect has a cost. As the last of the sunlight faded, Marcus leaned back, sipping his coffee, watching his dogs chase each other across the lawn, free, happy, and safe. The world, for once, felt still, and somewhere out there, Karen was probably looking for another shortcut. But Marcus knew one thing for sure. She'd never find one across his grass again. And that's how a man with patience, precision, and a little concrete engineering turned arrogance into karma. In the end, Marcus didn't just protect his lawn, he protected his peace. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud, it's perfectly engineered.